An artistic director is essentially a curator of stories. My job here at Queensland Theatre is to seek out, to find, to discover and develop stories that I think the audiences here need to see.
In my role as co-artistic director of Marageku, I have a shared responsibility to create new forms of storytelling between non-Indigenous and Indigenous people, working together to find new forms of dance languages.
Even if we are not the loudest voices in the work, we are often creating the space in which the men's voices are being heard.
A lot of what I have to do is artistic development and maintenance. So working with the players and the companies with whom we work to get the best possible artistic outcomes. And as music director, I conduct all the productions that the Australian Ballet works on wherever we are.
Sometimes I do choose things differently, probably because I am female. There are plays that I've selected that I know have been available to my male peers. Bleeding Tree was sitting on everybody's desks for programming, but the men didn't pick up the story. Why? And I look at that story and I go, maybe something in me as a woman saw something in there. Similarly with something like Prima Facie, maybe there's something in the script that speaks to me as a woman that didn't speak to the other male artistic directors.
Have I experienced sexism in my career? It's been an interesting question for Dahlia and I to think about. At first glance, we both felt not really.
I've been lucky enough to be working in a company that's quite strongly represented by women, from across our board to obviously the co-artistic director roles.
But thinking about it more deeply, I guess I realised that because our work has been about producing new aesthetics that look different to a lot of contemporary dance in this country, I think our work probably would have been taken more seriously earlier in Australia had we been men.
When I went overseas, in the first place I ended up studying, the majority of the students were women. The majority of students graduating at the top of the classes, winning the competitions, were women. Every single place I went into, I was told, well, you know, you can apply as a conductor, but you won't get in. They don't take women. And that was really, that experience went, oh, like this is everywhere. Leap forward to where we are now, there's still a tiny percentage of conductors in the world working are female. There are more and more, but on a percentage basis, I think it's still under the 10%.
I think working with Marageku for these number of years, built into our process is one of listening carefully. And when you're working across cultures, there are some things that women know and some things that men know, and people have responsibilities to carry their part in the storytelling, if you like.
I was part of an industry that had taught me to say that there was no difference between a male and a female director. That I was working the same way as men. And I realised very quickly, being an artistic director, that it was my job to examine that problem.
When I was in Europe, I was on audition panels. They'd started introducing screens as part of the audition process to try and stop the sort of prejudices coming into play. But I remember sitting there for the first time and being astounded as colleagues on the audition panel, as candidates came in, were trying to hear the way they walked, to work out whether it was male or female, were listening out for breathing in order to eliminate the women. And the more I learned, the more horrified I became, and the more I decided, okay, I need to be part of affecting change.
Working towards being an artistic director, it's an unusual path, and I don't think you know you can do it until you get the job.
Men will put themselves forward still a lot more readily for jobs. Women tend to be more thoughtful, considerate, and go, oh, actually, I'm not really qualified. Maybe I'll a bit more experience, or I'll undertake some more training, when blokes will go, sure, I can do that.
Of course, there's the obvious examples where women don't get enough opportunities as directors and choreographers of work to build up the experience, and I guess also to make the mistakes.
Systemically, across every industry, we've been learning in the last 20 years to trust women in leadership positions. I don't think we've got a lot of skill in trusting women with the money. The more money there is, the less we'll select a woman to do that job. I think that there's so few women in the role because it's all-consuming, and you have to set up your life so that your entire life can be soaked up in the job. And I think that makes it very difficult if you have family or caring responsibilities.
So the way Marigeku have helped to support other women in the industry, you know, those cast members that have young families that need to, you know, juggle being a mother as well as an artist, we're very familiar with because it's the same story for us. So we put in place things that support them on tour and within scheduling.
What structures have I put in place to encourage other women? I think I've tried to talk publicly about being a female artistic director and not talk about it in a worrying way.
One of the things that helped me realise how much work needed to be done was the number of women throughout my career, in whichever role I was in, I would get messages from women saying it's so important that you are doing what you are doing. Can you help us? Can you advise us?
I've also tried to ensure that insofar as opportunities that are offered, that I'm offering them equally to men and women.
What I'm proud of is conscious redressing of imbalances, appointing women, encouraging them, but also commissioning work of women.
I think the next thing is to ensure that the representation of women and all genders and all cultural differences are factored into processes and policies and all the cogs that make things turn.
I think the more women that are in more programming positions, more leadership of venues and festivals will create different kinds of programming, different approaches to curating, which might create more confidence and space for women's-led work to emerge.
An artistic director is a strange job. There are not very many of us, and you don't get to do it for forever. I treasure that time. I don't know when it'll end, but for a period of time I'm one of the people that gets to choose the stories that this country gets to see. And I don't think I'll ever take this time for granted.
A colleague of mine said they were at the ballet with a friend and a friend's daughter not so long ago, a young girl of about 8 years old, and I wasn't conducting. We had a guest conductor in that night, and it was a male colleague who walked in, and the little girl said, "Mum, it's a man. Conductors are women." And I went, yes.